It's 2 a.m. A Western mother stares exhaustedly at her baby monitor, listening to her infant cry as she forces herself to stick to the strict sleep training rules. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, a Japanese mother is peacefully asleep on a futon, her baby nestled safely next to her, completely quiet. Why do Western pediatricians constantly warn that bed sharing is dangerous and insist on early independence? Yet Japan, where co-sleeping and constant carrying are the absolute norm, has one of the lowest SIDS rates in the world. And why do Japanese babies seem to cry significantly less during those brutal first months? Most parents assume endless crying is just a biological instinct we have to endure. But here is what most adults never stop to think about. The way we respond to a child in their first 6 months doesn't just form a habit. It physically wires their nervous system to either be calm or constantly on edge. What if the exact behaviors we've been told are spoiling a baby are actually the hidden blueprint for raising the most emotionally regulated children? Let's uncover the truth. The fundamental clash between Western and Japanese parenting begins in the crib. In the West, the ultimate goal is independence from day one. We are taught to encourage self-soothing and physical separation, believing this builds resilience. Japan, however, operates on the philosophy of mother-child fusion, viewing the infant and caregiver as a single, extended organism for the entire first year. This is where the misunderstanding begins. Western culture largely views a baby's cry as a necessary form of communication, meaning parents naturally respond after the child cries. Japanese parents, conversely, view crying as the final, desperate alarm of a broken connection. Their goal is to intercept the distress before it ever erupts. Science backs up this biological intuition. Studies measuring cortisol, the primary stress hormone, reveal a hidden truth. Babies forced to self-soothe alone often experience silent cortisol spikes, whereas infants regulated through immediate physical contact maintain stable, healthy neurochemistry. But the biggest difference doesn't lie in how Japanese parents soothe a crying baby. It lies in what they do when the baby isn't crying at all. And this brings us to the first secret of the Japanese nursery. The first secret of the Japanese nursery is a subtle yet profound concept known as sensen no taio, which roughly translates to anticipatory response or preemptive care. In traditional Western parenting, advice books frequently instruct parents to wait. Give it 3 minutes. See if they can settle themselves. Or, wait for a genuine cry. Crying is treated as the mandatory starting gun for parental action. Japanese caregivers, however, operate on a fundamentally different timeline. They do not wait for the fire alarm to sound. They neutralize the spark before it even catches. Instead of waiting for a full-blown scream, Japanese parents constantly scan for microsignals. They notice a slight shift in a newborn's breathing pattern, a subtle squirm of the shoulders, or the quietest lip smacking. By intervening gently at the very first hint of discomfort, offering the breast, a gentle rock, or a reassuring touch, they prevent the infant's brain from ever escalating into a state of fight or flight. Developmental science reveals why this is so critical. When a baby is forced to escalate their distress just to be noticed, their fragile nervous system is heavily flooded with adrenaline and cortisol. They are forced to burn immense amounts of neurological energy just trying to survive the emotional spike. Are we unintentionally forcing our children's delicate nervous systems to trigger a red alert just to earn our attention? By responding early, Japanese parents actively conserve the baby's neurological resources. They establish a baseline of permanent calm, rather than trapping the child in an exhausting cycle of panic and delayed recovery. Yet, modern Western culture frequently labels this immediate preemptive responsiveness as spoiling the child, arguing that it destroys independence. And that exact misunderstanding leads us directly to the second core concept, a profound cultural pillar that the West has entirely misinterpreted. To understand why Japanese babies rarely spiral into inconsolable meltdowns, we must look at a cultural concept known as Amae, roughly translated as the presumption of another's love, or the unconditional right to depend entirely on a caregiver. Amae flips the Western parenting script completely upside down. In the West, There is a deep-seated fear of creating a clingy or overly attached child. From the earliest months, parents are pressured to push their infants toward autonomy, encouraging them to entertain themselves, sleep in separate rooms, and self-soothe through the night. The underlying belief is that independence is a muscle that must be exercised from day one. Japan takes the exact opposite approach. They believe that a newborn is not a miniature adult to be trained, but a fragile system that needs to be deeply anchored. Amae allows the infant to be entirely, unapologetically dependent without any judgment. But here is what most popular sleep training books do not tell you. Forced, early independence in an infant does not create true confidence. It creates underlying anxiety. Developmental science and attachment theory heavily support the Japanese model. When a baby is allowed maximum dependence during their crucial first year, they develop a profound, secure base. Their brain physically wires itself to trust that the world is a safe place and that their needs will always be met. Paradoxically, it is this absolute, unrestricted fulfillment of early dependence that gives the child the genuine psychological courage to step away and become truly independent later in childhood. But Amae is not merely an abstract psychological mindset. The Japanese have a very specific physical tool to turn this emotional dependence into a physiological charging station. And it is a daily practice that often leaves Western tourists staring in awe. But the psychological concept of Amae is physically manifested through a practice known as skinship and onbu, the traditional art of carrying a baby on the back. While Western culture has recently embraced baby wearing as a convenient parenting trend, in Japan, it is viewed as an essential biological mechanism for emotional regulation. Japanese infants spend a massive portion of their early months strapped to their mother's back, or sleeping directly next to her on a futon. This constant physical proximity serves a purpose far deeper than mere affection. It is a masterclass in physiological co-regulation. An infant's autonomic nervous system is severely underdeveloped at birth. They cannot easily control their heart rate, breathing, or body temperature when they become stressed. By keeping the baby physically attached, the mother's steady heartbeat and rhythmic breathing act as an external pacemaker, literally stabilizing the infant's fragile biology. Instead of buying expensive white noise machines or automated vibrating bassinets, Japanese parents use their own heartbeat, the only sound a newborn's brain inherently recognizes as absolute safety. Compare this to the standard Western approach, where physical separation is heavily marketed as the ideal. Strollers, bouncy seats, and solitary nurseries are the norm. This physical isolation forces the newborn's brain to figure out how to regulate its own spikes in stress, a neurological skill it simply does not possess yet. Research confirms that continuous skin-to-skin contact triggers a massive release of oxytocin, which acts as a natural buffer against cortisol, drastically reducing the occurrence of persistent crying. However, constant physical holding and co-regulation alone are not enough to fully explain the legendary calmness of Japanese babies. There is an invisible environmental factor that most modern parents are unknowingly destroying every single day. The final piece of the puzzle regarding Japanese infant calmness lies not in what parents do, but in what they deliberately choose not to do. This brings us to the fourth concept, maintaining a low-arousal environment. If you walk into a standard Western nursery, you will often find a riot of stimulation. High-contrast colors, motorized mobiles, musical playmats, and toys that flash or vibrate are widely considered essential for cognitive development. However, the traditional Japanese approach shields the infant from this sensory chaos. Japanese caregivers deeply understand that a newborn's brain is already working in absolute overdrive, simply trying to process basic light, sound, and gravity outside the womb. Adding loud, artificial entertainment does not comfort a baby. It overwhelms them. When an infant is exposed to continuous, high-intensity sensory input, their fragile nervous system eventually crashes. This sensory overload is the #1 biological trigger for the dreaded witching hour, that agonizing period in the late afternoon or evening when a baby screams inconsolably and refuses to sleep. This is where modern parenting often makes a critical error. We frequently confuse brain stimulation with completely draining a child's sensory energy. By prioritizing a muted, quiet environment, avoiding abrupt, loud play, and protecting the infant from chaotic adult activities, Japanese parents actively preserve the baby's limited mental bandwidth. They do not force a newborn to simultaneously process a noisy television, flashing plastic toys, and a parade of over-enthusiastic relatives. Consequently, the baby has enough internal energy left at the end of the day to peacefully transition into sleep. Understanding these four lenses, anticipatory response, the right to depend, physiological co-regulation, and sensory protection, reveals a profound truth. The difference between these two cultures is no longer just a story of East versus West. Raising a profoundly calm baby is not about superior genetics. As we've seen, it is a deliberate biological mechanism built on four pillars: anticipating needs before the alarm sounds, embracing absolute dependence through Amae, stabilizing the nervous system through physical co-regulation, and fiercely protecting the child's sensory environment. Western parenting often operates under the anxious belief that independence must be enforced from day one, or else the child will be clingy forever. But the misunderstood wisdom of Japanese culture leaves us with a powerful psychological truth. True independence cannot be trained. It must organically bloom. And it only blooms when the roots of early dependence are allowed to grow deep and secure without judgment. You do not need to move to Tokyo to apply this. It starts with holding them a little longer, responding a fraction of a second sooner, and letting go of the intense pressure to force autonomy on a newborn. What is the most frustrating sleep training or independence advice you have ever received? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to uncover more psychological truths. But before you change your entire parenting routine, if you found this exploration of Japanese parenting insightful, don't hesitate to share your thoughts or ask questions below. I'd love to hear how these concepts might fit into your own family's routine. Please remember, though, that this video is for educational and cultural exploration purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical, psychological, or pediatric advice. Every child is incredibly unique, so always consult with your pediatrician or healthcare provider before making significant changes to your baby's care, sleep routines, or health plans. Thank you so much for watching.